think we can begin here. Just make my PowerPoint a little bigger. Perfect. So I want to welcome you and thank you for joining us on this Inbox 25 webinar regarding our new integration with GoToWebinar. So before we begin, I've created sort of a brief slide deck just going over some of the major points we're going to be discussing in today's webinar. So let's talk about that now. So first up, we have our agenda. Just some general housekeeping. Then we have a big question: what is GoToWebinar? Why is it beneficial? How does Inbox 25 integrate with GoToWebinar? How can we use this integration to increase our marketing success? Then some best practices when using GoToWebinar, and finally the live demo. So just some general housekeeping before we begin. If there's any questions during the webinar, please feel free to ask them in the chat bar below. I'm going to get to as many questions as I can at the end of the webinar. So this webinar, along with all of our other webinars, are recorded and placed on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/inbox25tube. There should be a little slash there in between the com and inbox. I apologize for that. And finally, follow us on Twitter at inbox25 to get information on everything inbox. So from here, we can go into the big question, what exactly is GoToWebinar? Well, currently we are using GoToWebinar, but GoToWebinar is a video chat service that allows you to conduct online webinars for up to 1,000 individuals. GoToWebinar is also a subsection of the very popular video chat software GoToMeeting, which we both utilize here at Inbox 25 for all our conference calls, all our webinars, GoToMeeting and GoToWebinar. So, why is GoToWebinar beneficial? Why do we want to host webinars? What's really the point of hosting webinars? Webinars give you the chance to interact directly with your clients and potential clients. It's a fantastic way to promote a new feature or update within your product. Holding webinars shows active interest with your customer base and makes customer interaction more personable. You're showing an active interest in your customer base, and you want to prove, you want to show up your product, things of that nature. You can discuss common issues and questions regarding your platform to a large range of your customer base. It's also fantastic for lead generation. Webinars allow potential clients to see your product firsthand and live, and not a very daunting environment. You're going to be showing them; they really don't interact with you. So it's a great way to really get people acclimated with your software or your product. So how does Inbox 25 integrate with GoToWebinar? What's the extent of what we can do? Well, it goes pretty deep actually. So our GoToWebinar integration allows you to automatically register targets to webinars based on profile or behavior, track webinar attendees, score webinar attendees, and easily send webinar emails and reminders and follow-ups to your GoToWebinar applicants. So our GoToWebinar integration can also synchronize attendees with existing target records within Inbox 25, or create new target records when an applicant is not yet in your Inbox 25 database. So GoToWebinar is also fantastic for lead generation. We do sync up with Sugar CRM. We can leverage GoToWebinar as both a condition and an action with an automated workflow, which I will show you in the live demo. We can score based on webinar attendance and duration. We can create webinar registration forms with our landing page builder. And we can send webinar attendees reminders and follow-up emails, which I will get to all in the live demo. So, some best practices for GoToWebinar. Have a clear marketing plan set up before you're executing a webinar. You want to utilize webinar reminder email as a way to promote a high attendance rate. So make sure people don't forget. A lot of times you're going to be sending out these webinars, these invites, maybe a month beforehand. You want to send out some reminder emails, a couple days beforehand to make sure they remember they signed up. Schedule webinars sometime in advance, like I said, to let the following build. And you'll be proactive in marketing your webinars. Send emails, advertise on your website, social media, things like that. Get your webinar out there. You want as many people as possible when you conduct these webinars. So an overview of some of the support cases we're going to discuss in this live demo. So, first we're going to discuss, marketing your webinars by creating a landing page and form for registration within our platform. We're going to use that form to automatically propagate webinar registration. Then we're going to send an email out about 3 days before the webinar begins as a reminder email. We're going to score applicants based on webinar attendance and duration. And finally, we're going to send the follow-up email after the webinar has ended, just thanking them and giving them some more information about some potential webinars I have coming up. So now we can get to the really exciting part, which is a live demo. Let's switch over here So here we have our Inbox 25 dashboard. This is sort of the basis for everything you're going to be doing within the GoToWebinar integration. So here we can really start exploring the extent of what we can do. So the first step with using any integration with Inbox 25 is, of course, to first set it up. So to do this, we simply hover over the little gear icon here, and we click on the Integrations tab. Perfect. So on this screen, we have an overview of all the integrations we have available within Inbox 25. We do have webinars on both live chat and OLARC, and we are currently working on a webinar for Zendesk coming out within July, so within the next couple of weeks. But for our case, we're going to go to the GoToWebinar tab here. And setting it up is very simple. What you're going to do is just type in your account name, your account username and password. And then the biggest step here is to decide where you want new restraints who are not already in your database to be put into. So it can either be a marketing list or a CRM list. In my case, I do have Sugar hooked up to this account, so I have all my new prospects or new applicants that are in my system going to my leads module within Sugar. So for best practice, for most people using Sugar, depending on where your records are, contacts or leads module would be the best bet for where you want these people to go to. Leads would probably be the best area. So in my case, I have them mapped to leads, and it's really as simple as that. You click connect, and then from there, we can start using the integration to its fullest. So once we have our GoToWebinar username linked up to Inbox 25, we can really start utilizing our deep integration with GoToWebinar. So let's start this live demo by creating sort of a hypothetical scenario, a pretty popular real-world scenario. So the first step when you create any webinar is to first create and schedule the webinar within GoToWebinar's interface. So when you create your webinar within GoToWebinar and you schedule it, and you have that time. Once the webinar is synced up to, once your account is synced up to our platform, we're going to pull all that information into Inbox 25. So from there, as long as the integration is set up, that scheduled webinar's information is going to be synced up to Inbox 25. So now that we have a webinar created, let's start by building a form page where our clients can sign up for our webinar. We need a registration page for our clients to sign up for it. So we go to Pages and Forms here, and we have Landing Page Manager. And from this screen, we have a bird's eye view of all the landing pages we've created within Inbox 25. And you see I have one here called Webinar Landing Page. So if we click on the gear icon here, we can bring up the edit screen. So as you see on this screen, I've created just a very basic form page asking for minimal information. I've mapped this particular landing page to my leads module. If you go down here, so my leads module down here. So anyone filling out this landing page who's not already in my Sugar records is going to go right to the leads module. So the same thing, the same idea we have with with mapping our GoToWebinar applicants. So from here, I'm not going to get into the whole building of the landing page because we do have a separate webinar on that. But you can see I'm asking for minimal information: my email address, my name, mobile number, and country. So now at this point, you're probably wondering where this form is going to go. Best practice says, blast on social media. You should have an email blast, maybe a couple times, promoting this webinar. Put on your website, a bunch of stuff you can do in terms of getting this webinar out and up. So now we come to the question, how will these people who fill out this landing page be propagated into my applicant list for this particular webinar? It's a great question. So with Inbox 25 deep integration with GoToWebinar, we can create an automated workflow to have this landing page be automatically mapped to your webinar's applicant list. So to do that, we simply go over to the Automation tab here. So we go to the Automation tab, and we scroll down to the bottom of the screen, and we can click Add Automated Campaign. So from here, we're brought to our Automated Campaign Wizard. With our wizard-driven UI, we make creating automated campaigns simple and very elegant. So our first step is to decide which module from Sugar we want this list to be targeted to. So click this little button here. We can choose what list. This would be whatever list or CRM module your webinar landing page is mapped to. In my case, you've seen I mapped to the leads module. That's the module I'm going to choose for this particular campaign. Next step is to give us an easy identifiable name. I'm going to call this webinar application form. So, with regards to campaign matching settings, this is really going to dictate the logic you want your campaign to have, and it's really going to depend on your specific goals. I'm just going to cover what each of them mean briefly, just so you have a general idea. So when you select to match by current condition only, you're instructing the automated campaign engine to only consider matching the current condition rule, and not to check if any previously matched condition rules are still true. So progressive campaign requires that all conditions contained within your timeline must continue to match as your target continues through the nurturing path. So before any additional actions activate, the automated campaign engine checks to ensure that every previously matched condition is still true. And finally, we have smart campaign, where probably the majority of your campaigns are actually going to be. This basically means that the initial condition block within your campaign must be met in order for the campaign to continue. So we're going to choose Smart Campaign for this particular campaign and click Continue. Perfect. So from here, we're brought to our condition screen. So conditions are used to define the criteria that our campaign engine should look for when including targets in your campaign. So in this particular campaign, we're targeting those who filled out our landing page or filled the landing page I've created to register for this particular webinar. So I'm going to choose the landing page condition here. And they can name this condition. We can call this webinar form. And now we're prompted with picking either any form or a specific form we want to choose for this particular campaign. In my case, I'm going to choose the webinar landing page, which I've created before, and successful conversion, and then click Continue. So, from this screen, we can either add another condition or add another action. We're going to make this a pretty simple workflow, so we're going to add an action here. So now we have the ability to configure a wait connector. So the wait connector really means the amount of time when our initial condition is met, so when they fill out that landing page, to when the action triggers. For simplicity's sake, we can make this as long as we want. It makes more sense to just make this 1 minute. So I'm going to put 1 minute to make this action instantaneous, and click Continue. Perfect. So we have now added. So from here, we can now start adding an action to our timeline. So in our case, we want anyone who fills out this landing page to be automatically propagated into the webinar register list. So for this, we're going to choose to click on the GoToWebinar tab here. So GoToWebinar, click on that. Perfect. So from here, we can name this. We can call this dummy webinar. I think that's pretty much the name of the webinar I have created within our system. Perfect. Yep, dummy webinar. Perfect. So this is a webinar that I've created for June 29th. It's been synced up to inbox 25 with our integration, and it's going to pop up right on the screen. So we're going to click dummy webinar and click add action. So once this campaign is live, anyone who fills out that landing page registration form will automatically be propagated into our webinar attendance list. But you see, it's really simple to do a very sort of simple workflow where you have a landing page created, they fill out the landing page, and they're automatically propagated within that webinar. So, from here, we have a registration place set up. But with a great webinar campaign, you're going to be sending these invites out in advance. Maybe 2 weeks, a month. With people living busy lives, we want to send them a reminder 3 days beforehand when the webinar is scheduled. Just remind them that they've signed up for this webinar and to remember to join. So you can click end this campaign here. And of course, our first step now is to create another automated workflow. So we're going to go to the automation tab. So our reminder email is an extremely helpful tool to make sure you're getting the most out of your marketing efforts. So we're going to go down to the bottom of the screen here and click Add Automated Campaign. Okay. Now once again, our first step is to decide which module from Sugar. I'm going to keep things consistent here. I'm going to choose leads again, just because that's where my applicants are going. Enter the name for this campaign being called reminder email. Reminder email for webinar. And of course, with campaign matching settings, this is a pretty simple workflow, so it doesn't really matter too much. We can just click Smart Campaign and move on here. So once again, we're given our condition screen. I want to target a dummy webinar, so I'm going to choose the GoToWebinar condition here as our first condition. GoToWebinar. And I can name this. We can call this reminder. Perfect, reminder email. Then from here, then we need to decide which action we want to take. We can either set up a reminder email or a follow-up email. In our case, of course, we want to set up a reminder email. So we're going to click any webinar. And these are the webinars I have in the past that I've already passed up. The most relevant one for us would be the dummy webinar here. But of course, if you pick some of these past ones, you can set up a follow-up email. To dummy webinar here. We'll do did register and either post-webinar follow-up or pre-webinar reminder. We're going to do a pre-webinar reminder here. And click the amount of minutes, days, or hours before the webinar I want to send this email out. We're going to do 3 days here. And add a condition block. Perfect. So from here, we can either add another condition or add another action. In our case, simple workflow, let's add another action, or let's add an action. So you can configure a way connector here. Once again, we're going to make this action instantaneous. We want it to happen automatically. And click continue. So from here, of course, we want to send out a reminder email. So our first step here is to start, creating this email and picking it. So the first step here is to click Send Email Action, the Send Email tab here. And we can name this, call this once again, keep it all the same, webinar reminder. So from here, we have two options. We can either choose to use a previously created email within our platform. So these are all the previously created emails I've created within Inbox 25. Or we can create a completely new email within our email campaign wizard without ever leaving this this page. Now, I'm not going to get into our email builder today, but we do have a previous webinar and also a new updated video coming out within the next week about our new email campaign builder. So I highly suggest you check that out if you haven't already. So, in our case, we're just going to choose a previously created email, and we're going to do one called intro. So we're going to call it intro email here. Now, note, you will have to, when we use a previously created email, we will have to go back and edit the message just to check if everything's correct as a mandatory option. We do this more as a fail-safe to make sure everything in the email is correct before sending it out. Now that we're on the screen, it's sort of a perfect segue into discussing two really neat features we have in terms of the integration with GoToWebinar. So we go to our email setup here. We go to email format. We'll just click through the steps here to bring us to a template. We have two new tags that you can include within your emails that do some really neat things. So this is our email builder here. And I'm going to go to the text tab here, and I'm going to copy and paste or paste in the two tags I'm talking about. They're called GoToWebinar Reminder Details and GoToWebinar All Future. So the GoToWebinar Reminder tag will display a full webinar summary for the applicant that's receiving this reminder email. And then we have the GoToWebinar Future tag, which will list out each of the upcoming webinars you have scheduled inside the body of the email. So just two very helpful tags that add a little more functionality to the email builder to make sure your applicants are either reminded or notified of any future webinars you might hold. So we'll click Save and Continue here. And finish and save. Perfect. And click Add Action. So here we've created a very basic workflow where 3 days before this webinar is scheduled, we're going to send them a reminding email, just giving them updated information to make sure that they attend this webinar and they know about it. So maybe click End Campaign. Perfect. So another interesting feature with GoToWebinar is our ability to create scorecards around it. Now, aside from using GoToWebinar with automated campaigns, we have the ability to score based on rules like webinar attendance and duration. So this goes hand in hand with making your lead scoring and lead nurturing campaigns more dynamic and effective. So by adding another potential condition for scorecards, we increase the likelihood of moving those leads down your sales pipeline, more efficiently and faster. So from here, we're going to go to our scoreboard here and then click Scoreboard Manager. If you see here, I've already created a sample scorecard called GoToWebinar Rules. I have 3 rules within the scorecard. So we click the Edit button here. You see that we have the 3 rules I have created within GoToWebinar. So in this case, I have scored based on simply signing up for the webinar. So it'll be a simple sign up. So when you sign up for my webinar, I give you X amount of points. I think in this case I gave you 6 points for signing up for my dummy webinar. If you attend the dummy webinar or a previous webinar I have created called Alex Webinar Dry Run, I give you 10 points. And if you attend 50% of the webinar, so we have different metrics here. You know, how long did they attend? 75%. Did they attend 50%? And of course, you can do this for any webinar or a specific webinar. You know, we give you a ton of flexibility. When creating certain rules. Okay, so you know what we're going to do here is I'm just going to show you how to create a sample rule here. So we'll create a new rule, and let's get a kind of a hypothetical scenario here where if someone didn't register for my webinar, I want to give them a negative amount of points. Probably not the best business tactic, but just to show you that it can be done within our system at any point. So we'll do the GoToWebinar integration here and call this did not attend. Maybe this is a mandatory webinar. I don't know how you have it set up, but just show you can give negative points within our system. Okay, so what we have here is our sample scorecards, or the sample scorecard we're working on for did not attend. I can choose any webinar or a specific one. I'm going to leave it at any webinar. Did not register, and assign a negative point value. As you see, it's really easy to assign or to create scorecards, really move, to speed up the velocity and efficiency of people moving down your sales pipeline to get those leads ready to buy. So in our case, we could save this rule, and perfect. So there's one last thing I want to discuss before we finish up today's webinar, and that's really discussing the reporting feature within Inbox 25. So if we go to our reports feature here and go to integration reports, here we see all the integrations we have within Inbox 25. In our case, it's most relevant, and we choose the GoToWebinar reporting feature. Perfect. So from here, we can see various metrics. On the top, we have a high-level metrics like total attendees and total amount of webinars we've held and scheduled. We also have how many new targets were created from these webinars, as well as any monetary value associated with opportunities if you're linked up to Sugar. If you look a little lower, we have a graph that'll break down metrics like registrants and attendees, repeat attendees, new versus returning attendees, and also activity by your lifecycle stages. So by your sales funnel, how many prospects, identified leads, qualified leads, etc., have signed up to your webinar. If we go even lower, we see a more bird's eye view of all the webinars we actually have created within Inbox 25, or synced up, I should say. You can see, if we click on the restraints, or the registrants, and click 5 here, you can see we have 5 people that have signed up for this particular webinar. We have myself, a couple of my colleagues, and we give you various metrics like how many people have attended, how many repeat attendees are in this particular webinar, the average duration, and of course how many new targets were created from this webinar itself. So now we're kind of summing up to the end of the webinar. I'm going to take any questions that we might have had during the webinar. I'm looking in the chat box here. I see one question. So that's a good question. Does the wait connector matter when sending reminder emails and follow-ups? It actually doesn't. So the wait connector could be anything. Most likely be 1 minute. It's going to go on based on when the webinar is actually scheduled. So if you send a reminder 2 days before the webinar, it's going to go based on the date of the webinar, not based on the date of the wait connector or the time of the wait connector. Same thing with a follow-up email. So not too many questions. But if you think of any further questions later on, please email me at james.verdi@inbox25.com, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So I hope this webinar has been informative and helpful, and it's getting this platform integrated and start using that with your marketing efforts. It's a really great way to reach out to potential clients and clients. Hosting webinars it's really a great way to do those things. So on that note, remember that all our webinars are recorded and placed on our YouTube channel at Inbox25 and Inbox25 Tube. And on that note, that sums up today's webinar. Hope you all have a great day.